everybody. Welcome to Perpetual Motion. I'm the host, Dr. Mo Anderson. I'm a best-selling author with 8 published books, a W3 award-winning podcast host, a conference speaker, and a communication coach. My goal for each episode is to help you stress less, produce more, and love the ones you're with. My guest this week is Terry Short. Terry is a human potential developer. She has a master's in business administration, healthcare management, more than 30 years of leadership experience. Today, we're having a fun one-on-one on how and why words matter.
You can't say Dr. Mo ain't tell ya that fear magnifies the consequences of failure. What are you scared of? Why are you afraid? I'd rather live like I'm dying than live to die. Any day, my heart is pure, my soul is
Welcome,
safe.
Terry.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. I'm so thrilled to be here.
All right. I've been looking forward to this because I have never talked with a self-described human potential developer. Where did that title come from and what does it mean?
Oh, well, I appreciate being able to talk about it. No one ever asked me. They just look and say, what is that? So I have relatives and friends who are developers. And I was thinking about this one day. You know, they develop shopping centers and different things. And I thought to myself, what do I build? What do I do? What do I provide?
Okay.
And I been in the business forever for developing human potential and helping others thrive. That's why I'm here.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. What a wonderful occupation and a great job description. I would apply in a heartbeat. I'm probably not qualified, but I like it. I like it. I read in your online bio that you excel in assessing complex situations, challenges, and helping others break them down with clarity into actionable steps. This is by no means a political show, but is there any way I can nominate you to coach Congress on this process?
That's hilarious. I want to say to you, yes, put me in, coach.
Well, I'm ready to play.
I'm ready. Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think that I would perhaps be heard, but then that's what it's all about. So I believe that my ability to distill complex problems, complex ideas, is my ability to listen. And part of listening is coupled with that asking solid probing questions. And we'll get to that a little bit later. And I'd like to talk about exactly how to set those questions up. And so what I think I'm always interested in doing, Dr. Mo, is it's like an onion. Here's the onion, and I'm peeling back the layers until I get to the heart of what's gone on. And so that's what that's about. And I love it. If I can be hired to help someone, an individual or an organization, take all this noise and distill it down to what's important to them by way of asking questions, then it's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The words we choose and the way we encounter and interact with them and listening is such a big part of true communication, trying to understand and be understood and build a relationship. It's something we talk about often on this program, but you just can't enough. I mean, even when I think about when I watch Parliament, not just, our Congress, around the world, when I watch governing bodies, everybody seems to be waiting for their chance to jump up and shout. There's no feedback, no communication. What I hear you say is just, no, it's my turn. It's my turn. And then we're just two ships passing in the night. I like what you do. And in talking about words, what is the significance of the words we choose? Why does it matter?
It matters first and foremost for me individually. So before I am to communicate with you, what's going on in I like to call it my personal podcast, what's going on in my head, and then how does that inform how I'm going to communicate with you? And so often, and this is what you're observing in government as well, we have what's in our head and we have what's in our heart. And too many times, those two things, when they converge, they don't come out aligned. Right? Either I'm speaking just from my head or I'm speaking from my heart and there's emotion involved in it and it creates a misunderstanding. When I can set my intention clearly and go from what's in my head, what's in my heart, wrap that all together, and then out it comes, then I'm choosing the right words. And, the trick there is I speak very quickly. You're about to find that out in our 45 minutes together. So that connection and that alignment has to happen in a nanosecond. So when you are more prepared with the right words and choosing the right words, it's a little more effortless, right?
It is, right. I like that you talk about combining what's in your heart and what's in your head, because I feel like I'm cerebral, but I also have a lot of emotional intelligence. And I've heard so many people, experts, talk about, emotion clouds reason, emotion clouds logic. But for me, the most compelling and convincing speakers are the ones who can align the two and combine them in a way that's persuasive. And it's very, very powerful. And I can tell when people don't do that,
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hear a lot lately about storytelling, the power of storytelling, and
right.
how great leaders are good storytellers. That's what they're doing. They're taking a concept, something that's in their head, something they would like to instruct upon or, share, and they're attaching it to a story, to something that's more emotional, something that they can feel into, and then they're delivering it in a way that helps connect those dots for the audience.
Right, which is in no way new, whether we go back to King Arthur's court, King William's court, or to the griots in Africa. Storytelling as a way of passing on information or history is just that old. It's centuries old, but the way we do it, I see it is going back to that form of storytelling, which has lasted and is really much of what we know today in our history. So I'm glad we're reconnecting in that way, and that you're teaching people how to do it. But you mentioned your personal podcast. How do words impact our internal narrative, if that's the same thing, if I'm using the two terms correctly?
You are. I think about how we listen to podcasts now, and I'm so grateful for how people like yourself share information via a podcast. And then it makes me think that all day, every day, potentially 24/7, or at least in my case, sometimes at 3 a.m., there's this internal narrative playing, right?
Right.
And what occurs to me is I'm in control of that. And I get to be the producer, the director, the narrator, the host. I decide, does my mother come on tonight at 3 a.m.? Who comes on? Does it some nemesis from my past or what have you? And so often we give up that control and we start to hear these repetitive messages and we believe them. Everybody's heard the story of the art teacher or the music teacher who told the fourth grader, you'll never be an artist, or these limiting things. And that narrative plays over and over and over again until we believe it. So it's a matter of it's a switch out situation. So some people say, oh, I'm going to put this Post-it up here and I'm going to say this thing all the time. Fine, but really you need to replace something. You need to have this limiting belief that is going over and over again and replace it with the affirmative belief.
Okay, I don't quite get that. So if they have an affirmation that they're saying, you're saying the two shouldn't coexist.
One's replacing the other. So I don't want to layer the affirmation on the narrative that I'm still believing. I want to switch it out completely. I want to abandon the narrative that no longer serves me.
Okay. I recall a counselor telling me one time I was going through a difficult time and I was having that problem. And she said I was ruminating on things because that thought would go through my head over and over. But it's not that easy, though, to just stop doing that. It just comes and it's there. So the process of replacing it, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because it's not a simple, it's simple, but it's not.
I would say think about it as a trigger. So back up a little bit. My undergrad was in psychology, but I never completed it. So we can only go so far in this conversation. Just saying. But here's as a
that's
coach,
impressive, by the way. Okay.
As a professional coach, though, I'll tell you what I coach. Is that think of it as a trigger. So something triggers you. When we know that we have a trigger, then we're better off or better in a position to handle that, whatever it is that creates this trigger, right? So think about that narrative. You don't have a great voice. I tell myself that all the time. right? You don't have a great voice. So when I hear that internally, I'm going to make that a trigger for what I want to believe. I'm going to make it a trigger, just as some other external trigger might happen. I'm going to make it a trigger for the replacement. It's not easy, but that's what makes it easier, is owning that this repetitive message no longer serves me. There is no value in me believing that I can't sing, what have you, right?
Right. And that sums it up very, very well. And we have to affirm and encourage ourselves. I say encourage ourselves, because a lot of times everything coming at us is so negative, and reinforcing that limited belief that you talked about. You say there are words that minimize or undermine, you said it a moment ago, and words, but there are also words that elevate. Can you share some examples of words we choose that may have this type of impact? And some of them may even be surprising. We probably don't realize what we're doing, but can you give us some example of those types of words?
Sure. I'm going to start with what I perceived sort of blew up in 2020 during COVID. Everybody I knew started talking in terms of if. Well, if we return to the office, if we get to see our loved ones again, if the kids go back to school. And I think to myself, well, how limiting is that? Of course, all those things are going to happen. So we're better served. And so are the listeners, perhaps the children or your loved ones, when you say when we get back together, when we return to the office, that's affirmative and more inspiring than limiting yourself and saying if. You're putting right out there that I'm going to minimize this thought by saying if, instead of choosing to elevate that thought by saying when, and then you could move into the conversation from there.
Okay.
That's one.
Okay. If is a minimize or limiter. What about to elevate? A common one.
So that would be when. So you replace it with when. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, but I'll give you another one that's along those lines. But. Right?
Yeah. Guilty.
And then some people say, oh, well, I very rarely use but. I use however instead. And I had someone say to me once, well, however is but in a tuxedo.
I love it. I have never heard that. I love it. And you always get me when you tell me something. And there are many things I don't know. You can fill the Smithsonian with what I don't know, but I love hearing a new phrase or idiom. That's funny.
So here's how this works. When someone says anything, they say, I would like to show you the report of the project that the team's been working on, but I'm going to have to do such and such. I've just cut what I wanted to tell you, and I've minimized it because I've said this fabulous thing I'm about to do, and now you're perked up going, but what? And it severs the thought. Or you're sharing something with me and I stop you by saying, but have you considered such and such? The easy way to change that, and this can be 98% of the time, is to switch out but with and. So let's say it was particularly negative news. We're behind on this project, but we don't have enough staff and our resources are limited, and this is why that we're not able to catch up. Or I could say, we are behind on this project and we will need to dedicate additional resources to this. So now I'm being affirmative and much more inspiring in what I'm offering to you than this negative thing, but this more negative thing on top of that, right? So I'm limiting the whole thought process.
That's very good. That will help people in a lot of situations. It's amazing how those small single syllable words can have such an impact on people's attitude and productivity. As you were sharing, the reason I got kind of scattered on the if and when thing was that I had an aha moment. I coach, aspiring authors who want to publish or self-publish. And it just came to my mind that of the few who were not able to complete, the work together, no matter the list, the steps, the accountability, they insisted on saying if. And the many successful authors now would always say, when I have my book, when I'm published, when I become an author. And I didn't really think about it until this moment, but and I felt like a failure that they couldn't reach that point, but it was that if factor, in fact, that I think held them back. So I'll be sure and coach people myself on watching their language, going forward with their personal narrative. It's not just what I say, it's what you say to yourself. Wow. Thank you. We're done here. No.
But wait, but I have more.
More. But I've grown as a person, and that's really why I did this. So
I'm pleased to know that I've elevated your human potential.
Thank you. You have. Send me your bill afterwards. Venmo, PayPal. Well, we'll get you all set up. I appreciate that. Trust me, I'm listening hard when I'm talking to guests, sometimes to my own demise as a host, but I'm like, oh my God, that's so good. I'm listening like it's a podcast I'm listening to. So very good. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things I firmly believe, and I think you do too, is lead where you land, that you don't have to be CEO, upper level executive or mid-level executive or any type of executive, that you're in a leadership role. We can all be role models and all lead wherever you are, consider it a position of influence. So as we talk about using our words to impact others, I want to start with how do leaders in the home deepen their connection with loved ones through their choice of words?
Yes, we all lead. We lead ourselves first and foremost.
Yes.
And then, we lead in our personal lives and our professional lives. And that gets back to being engaging, and more engaging than one is maybe inclined to be. And I've had to learn this. Dr. Mo, I'm telling you, straight up, I've had to learn this. Anybody listening to this that knows me, they're like, well, she didn't come by that naturally.
Well, I appreciate your saying that too, because sometimes we get up on these pedestals and forget to say that we had to climb and that we fell many times on our way there.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was actually known quite a bit as a talker as a child. Actually, I grew up
That's hard to believe.
I know. There are 4 kids, and here's how this would work. My father, he would come home from work. We ate dinner at exactly the same time every night, and he'd say, "Okay, what happened in school today?" And he'd ask the first one, and he'd ask the second one. And when he got around to my brother, who was rather quiet, my brother would say, "And nothing. That's nothing." And then I'd say, "Could I have his time?" So what I mean by that is I have in the past been more interested in being interesting as opposed to interested. So think about this. I want to tie this back to your question about at home and in one's personal life. When you're interested, you ask better questions. And for there's actually a section in the book when you're speaking to children, you're framing your questions so that you're not getting monosyllabic answers or the horrible word fine. Right. Fine.
Which is worse than yes, no. Fine is
that's right.
Fine so is a step down.
That's right. Absolutely. It's like middle of the road. So how do you do that? You ask more powerful questions that start with what and how. What and how. And you try to avoid why. The reason we avoid why is because of potential judgment. When you think about the political environment we've been in the past, when we say, why did you vote for that police chief? Then if I ask you that, you might assume that I'm implying some judgment, that I wouldn't have voted for him, type of thing. Whereas I say, what are your thoughts on the police chief? Or, how do you believe the police chief will serve our community? I'm engaging with you on a deeper level, and I'm showing up interested and out from a place of curiosity as opposed to judgment. And it works at home too, like super simple, like, why weren't the dishes done? No. Right? So that means like, good golly, I judge that you didn't do those dishes. Whereas I could ask it a different way. I could say, what else do you have going on tonight? Or what might prevent the cleanup in the kitchen? Or so I'm wanting to know a little bit more about where you are, as opposed to kind of throwing it out there in a judgy way.
Well, coming from, a family like I do, where they're very skilled in word use, I have to ask, what element does tone play in that? Because I know some people who could use the right choice of words, but the tone and body language and eye contact or lack thereof would still make it come off as judgmental, or I would perceive it that way. So where do those come in addition to word choice? And I know that's not the topic, but I think it's the overall part of the delivery and good communication.
Absolutely. When we speak of communication, we talk about nonverbal communication
Right.
as well, and that's what you're
Right.
referring to. In the book, I call that section sarcasm. So sarcasm and defensiveness. So it's about understanding, or at least my position has been to understand what causes that person to come from that position, right? I accept it for that, for what it's worth, for that. I know I come from an extremely sarcastic family. That's like sort of where we find our humor, and it can be a very scary thing. And so I am wise to know that and to understand that that's where that body language or that what's being offered to me is coming from. That's the place it's coming from. This is the key. It does not remove me from being responsible for my word choices. Like I can't, this is what we do is we say, oh, well, she's just being sarcastic. So I turn up with the same.
Right.
Yep. And I serve it back, and then you get nowhere. So my rule of thumb there is do your best to perceive where that person's coming from, and then let that go and stand firm in what your intention, what you intend to convey to the other person.
Very good. Which is what we know how to do it, because we do it outside of the home. No matter what your manager or supervisor or whatever said, if you want to keep your job, you respond in a way that's pleasant and professional. But then we get with these loved ones who I feel we most need to connect with, and we suddenly lose that ability. And even if we know that they're tired or sick or whatever, you just default into, well, if you're talking to me like this, I get to talk to you back like that. So that is wonderful advice. I'm glad we started with the home. Then,
well, can I just say, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just made me think of this thought that, you've heard that, well, that was a career limiting move. Have you heard that before? Mm-hmm. Right. Have you ever heard somebody say, well, that was a relationship limiting move? No. Like to your point, we don't do that.
Well, but we roll our eyes and we look at our cousin sitting next to us, because we know that's going to be a long car ride home.
That's right. That's right. And that's what it is. It's a relationship limiting move to say this thing or to, react in this manner or what have you. But we know that in the workplace. We, like to your point, we know that and we own it. And so we respond accordingly, and we don't carry that into our relationships.
Right. Yeah, we can. We should. Dr. Chapman talks about that in love languages that we've all, gotten familiar with, even if we're not employing them. But this is part of it. And I like the way you're breaking it down and making it easy to understand. And I think easy to make really quick changes in the way that we're communicating with others. So what about in the office or education, academia, community-based organizations, corporate arenas? Because I don't want anybody to think this doesn't apply to them. So we're going to say every industry, and particularly right now when there's such an issue with recruiting, hiring, retaining employees. How can we squeeze the most out of reward and recognition of efforts, which is all a lot of people want?
Absolutely. That is the key to retention, is recognizing people. You can read that over and over again. How do you do that? It's not enough to say, thank you for covering that extra shift last night. Right? I know that you did, I know that you did, and that's what I recognize. What would really make an impact is if I tied it to the mission, vision, or values of the organization. So if I said, Dr. Mo, I very much appreciate you covering the shift last night. That was an incredible representation of the teamwork that we hold as one of our values here, or the collaboration, or what have you. And, that extra effort served to assist your coworker who's out with COVID and whatever, but you're tying, you're not just saying thank you for this thing, you're tying it to mission, vision, and or values, any combination thereof, and therefore connecting me to my purpose. My purpose in being there, what I'm doing. So that's the thing, is that leaders tomorrow could start being more overt and intentional about how they speak to the mission, vision, and values of the organization.
So what about the leader or manager who has all of these reports? And I've seen this, and they're really trying, but even within that, they end up just saying the same thing, though, to everyone. How do they, avoid that? That's challenging. I've been in that position as well. You're trying to personalize it. That's not the word you use, but that's an easy word for simple people like me. But there's so many people, and there's so little time. How do you tie that in for each person, and not, because they hear you in most of these offices, how do you not come off as, oh, she says that to everybody now? It's not really a compliment anymore, or it's not really a recognition, if you will.
Absolutely. So here's the challenge. First of all, there's so many people couldn't tell you what their company values are. So
True.
Start there and have those take them off the wall and put them right in front of you, and challenge yourself to weave in one of the values, a piece of it, a word, if it's a phrase. I'm a big fan of verbing your values. And so speak in terms of the action related to that value. So if you're coming to tell me something positive, like this is what I think you're saying, I'm just happy you showed up, right? like just shoot, great, just happy you showed up.
Let me get you some coffee. What do you need?
Yeah, exactly. But find that one thing that you can say. So maybe it's not even an action. Maybe it's so I used teamwork already. Give me honesty. A lot of people have honesty or integrity or something like that in their values. I might say, Dr. Mo, you are doing a fabulous job. I would like to be honest with you about the fact that I understand we have one fewer people working right now than we should. I've woven honest in there. Yes. I'm imparting that to you, and again, helping you feel part of the purpose of what we're all here to do. I like to call it everybody pulling on the same rope, and the rope is the values. But it's not until the leader, not but it's not until the leader
like that
is
self-correction.
Really clear and really intentionally weaving those values into commentary every day. And you'll get good at it. But you have to know what they are first.
Right.
And you have to have them front and center, ready to weave.
Excellent. There you go, leadership. Take it away. Get to work. What words, we're still on leaders. What should leaders eliminate from their lexicon, which is the set of words we commonly use? And I just want to add on to that, if you can imitate members of your family and everyone knows who you're imitating, that's what we're talking about by lexicon, the words and phrases they commonly employ. What words should we eliminate from our lexicon that are common?
Well, I'm going to rattle off a few of them that I hear all the time by the leaders that I coach. And then I'll go back and talk about some of the replacements.
Okay.
Probably, might, should. We'll get back to that one in a second. Can't, have to. Have to is a big difference maker. So let's start there. I coached the CEO of a hospital system several years ago, and he's actually mentioned in the book because he did this the best I've ever seen this done. We talked about he had a horrible morale issue at the time, and we talked about the morale issue, and everybody walked around saying, we have to this and we have to that. It's healthcare, right? So you have to follow safety guidelines. They're rules and regulations.
Right. Standards of care, right.
It doesn't mean you have to speak in those terms. And so I started talking to him about what you get to do. We get to follow this procedure because it keeps our patients safe, right? Nice. And we get to do this. And he just very slowly and methodically started speaking in terms of what they get to do as the leadership team. And we get to have a town hall in order to share more information with our workers. And he just wove it in. He never once said to anybody, I would like you also to speak in terms of get to as opposed to have to. It just happened organically. And it was a beautiful thing. And he single-handedly turned the organization around by how he started speaking about what they were there to do, what everybody was there to contribute. And I think that's an important piece of it, is that everyone shows up with the intention to contribute on a daily basis. And so the leader's job is to bring out the best of that. And that requires speaking in terms that are more inspiring. So probably might, I hear this a lot, we'll probably meet our goals. Well, will you or won't you, right? And so, or we might meet our goals. So there's an opportunity to say, if you're not sure, then I'm 75% sure that we're tracking to meet the goals by the end of the year or what have you. That's clarity.
Yes. Does
not help me as the employee to hear a lot of shoulds and maybes and probablys all woven out. I expect the leader to stand firm and confident and certain about the things that they're leading us to do.
Exactly. We saw Steph Curry, when you see or athletes who put the team on their back and they get the eye of the tiger and they're speaking, they're hyping them up. And it's important to, you can have the tone, but you're telling us it's important to have the right words as well, not just to do it in the right way. That's really great. And good for him. I love that when people, not only that you're impacted lives, but then when that ripple effect and you just made a huge difference. So many people just want all of these followers, but if you get to the right person, it's the influence. It's not just that you follow me, it's making a difference in a major way. So that's a really awesome story.
Well, and here's another thing that no one ever follows. Tell me the last time you followed somebody who told you that you should do something. You should do something, because should takes the ownership away. Like should, because who said that? Like the man behind the curtain.
Right. Is this a theory or is this something you actually did?
Right. So I grew up in Maryland. There were a lot of shoulds on the east. I think there are a lot of. You're in Texas, I think. So there's shoulds in Texas too. And I moved to California, and apparently they missed the memo. There weren't like any shoulds. Like really? Just on certain social things, there weren't. When I should wear white and when I should wear open-toed shoes or not or whatever. And I was like, but that stuck with me. And I became very, very sensitive to when someone said, you should do this. I would, well, why? Give me some good information about that. And so in the workplace, we should do this is a one step towards a we, they, or us, them culture, because you're offering that someone else believes this. I don't own it, or I wouldn't choose the word should.
That's excellent. That's really good. And I hadn't thought about it, but I agree with what you're saying. Should. Okay. I've got my little list here of notes. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this 3 times because this leads to my next question though. How do you change your lexicon or idiolect after years of training yourself to use particular words that are meaningful to you, or maybe that someone else used and you copied because that was your role model, your idol, and if it worked for them, it must work for you? Because I find myself getting this great information, and then I just kind of slip back into, habit is stronger than love. And so tell us some ways to ensure that we're making that transition. It's not going to happen instantly, of course, but how can we keep reminders and keep moving in the right direction?
Absolutely. That is key, because I like to say you can't unsee the list. So if listeners have been writing down their list, now they have this list. What are you going to do with that? You cannot change them all at one time. So to your point, choose that which is more repetitive, your word choices that seem to turn up over and over again.
Yes.
And take that that one word or phrase and say, I will hereby replace it with this to the best of my ability. And I actually like to do, when I'm presenting, I like to do an exercise where, everybody writes it on a Post-it or an index card. What's that one word? And then just tear it in itty bitty pieces and be gone with it. And then write the replacement word, and stick it up there where you can see it. And as your constant reminder, do that for one word or phrase, not all, I've given several examples here, and it hopefully, one or more will resonate with each listener, that, oh, I'm a should person, or what have you. Right. And then set about fixing that one, and then move on to the others.
That's great. That's great. Then step by step, and make progress that way. That's excellent. When we spoke before, you talked about the personas of a thriving leader while we're on leadership. Can you make us a little familiar with that? I don't want to give away everything in your great book, because it's gotten rave reviews, and anyone listening to this can see that you're very skilled in this subject.
Well, thank you. This part that I'm going to tell you about is woven not very overtly in the book. It's in there, but it's the next book. So maybe we should talk about that coaching of the next book. So the 6 personas of the thriving leader is what I refer to them as. And I actually host retreats that bring this information to life. And we've talked about some of it already. So ambassador of the culture, that's the leader that is able to articulate the mission, vision, and values and weave that into all that they do. So they're the inclusion officer. They're the ambassador of the culture. The next is the leader as coach, the person who squeezes the most out of that recognition, has powerful one-on-ones that doesn't just provide an update to them, but helps to grow their individual contributors, right? The continual change agent, if you're not a continual change agent in the business world today, like, you're out, you're just. Absolutely. Yeah. Change is the constant. And so learning to lead with why, like Simon Sinek says, and, there are different techniques around being that continual change agent. Hard to say. The life integrator is the persona, that's the individual who's able to think about what's important to them from the aspect of spirituality and home and friends, community, and be able to weave that all together in their life so that they have a life-work balance. Yes. Right? Yes. And emotional and intuitively intelligent. So that's the leader who's able to tap on other resources and, not having to have all the data in front of them, but to be able to seek data in other ways and through conversation with others, right, and use that. And last but not least, the proactive and productive juggler. So that's the person who's able to create very meaningful calendar specific invites and how to manage their priorities. And by that, I mean, maybe that they're calendaring yoga in the morning and breath work in the afternoon or what have you, but really being able to juggle and prioritize all that's important. So those are the 6 personas. Wow, that's good. I will look forward to that book as well. The words we choose. Let's talk about your book, The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter. And you've hit on several concepts. And it really is. I got to read a little bit of it. I just got it like 2 or 3 days ago, but what I read has been excellent so far. And I even like that one reviewer wrote, "This book is an immensely practical guide for the day-to-day conversations that allow relationships to blossom, connections to deepen, and cultures to mature," which is what we really want and need at this time. What prompted you to write this book? There are decades in the coming, really, and my perception of how the best way to explain it is that it's a quote in the book by Tom Kenyon that we are creating the world by how we speak to each other, right? And so whether I was at work or at home or in the community and seeing what's going on, in the world at large, it became more and more important to me to express myself as far as my expertise in communication and to get that out there in the world. And I pieced it together by saying, okay, wait a minute, as I started this conversation, what's important for the individual? So the first chapter is all a look inward. And what sort of dialogue are you serving yourself? Right? That voice is a choice. And then from there, and that's important. You can't change up the choices when you're dealing with others in the world if that dialogue isn't serving you well, right? It puts you that's what I think is a lot of what's wrong in the world and how we base things on fear, is that the internal dialogues are based on fear. Right. And so we need to get past that first. So anyway, so I got more and more passionate about it, and I started writing, and I didn't stop. And I wrote it in a year. I literally started writing and didn't stop, and pulled in lots of advisors, because in the book there's a section on ageism and sexism and racism and all the isms. And obviously I'm not an expert on all those. So I did my research. I love the research, and I love calling on colleagues and peers and getting feedback and really collecting information from my others, my community, right? To make it what it is. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I like you saying that, you called on others, you called on experts. We can't be an expert in everything, but there's those opportunities for growth that we recognize that and reach out to other people who are experts. And with that in mind, as a writer myself, I know you start out with one vision and one destination, but in the process of gathering this information and doing research and reading what others have said on the subject, sometimes it changes you. How did, if at all, did the writing of this book, the research and writing, change you?
Changed me greatly. And now I say that yours is the voice of humankind. Use it well. And when I got to the end of the book and I realized that, I hereby feel the weight of that every day. I feel the weight of the power of my voice. And so when I say it in that way, I can go, the power of my voice, and I get so excited, right? And I think about, as a woman and as a female leader and this and that. And then I go, whoa, the power of my voice. Wow. And I think about it differently. And I wrote that book, and I learned everything at the end. And I honestly, maybe this happens to you, or maybe it happens to everybody, but it was probably, you have that 1 month where you're like, I write the book, this and that. 2 or 3 months later, I'm like, I have to rewrite it. There's more.
Right. Yes, there's so much more. I learned
so much. Yeah, because I learned so much, and I still endeavor to share what I've learned and to keep iterating on that. I mean, eventually you put the book to rest and you put it out in the universe as is, but that learning keeps happening. And even these types of conversations that I have, which I love, it's a continual process.
Absolutely. And as far as the amount of material and how do I get it all in, I just say that's why God made editors, and I just throw it all in there, and then they go to work slicing and dicing with surgical precision. And then there's your second book.
That's right. That's right. Everything that's on the floor, right? Bringing it back. Yeah.
We're going to bring it back and make hot dogs and chicken nuggets.
That's right. Right. So what I learned was that my voice is the voice of humankind, and I carry that weight with me, and I do my best to help others see that as well. And therefore I choose my words wisely with consideration for their impact.
What do you have a favorite word or a favorite phrase? And I hadn't told you I was going to ask that question, but while you're thinking about it, I'll tell you mine, and then we'll talk about how people can connect with you. But I heard this when I think I was in college, and I heard that the French, their favorite American word at that time was cellar door, CELLAR, door. And so I'm visual. So I'm picturing a cellar door. I'm thinking about the sound of it. I'm thinking the cellar is cold. This is before, everybody had a wine cellar, and now they're cool. And then I just kind of set it in a vacuum, cellar door. And I'm like, oh, that is a beautiful word if you didn't know anything about it. And so that is and this is a first. I don't think I've ever shared that. Random fact is that is actually, even though it's 2 words, that's my favorite word. So what is your favorite word or phrase?
All right, you're making me laugh because all I can think about when you're saying that is NEM. That I'm thinking cellar door, like the root cellar, and and you will be taken away to Oz if you don't go in there. I love it. It's a phrase for me, and this was a learning out of the not so much out of the book. It was once I started doing the podcast, and that the phrase is "tell me more." I talked to you earlier about leading the questions with what and how. You want to be more engaging at home, of your team, what have you. You're doing one-on-ones as the leader, whatever it is. You're asking your questions that start with what or how. And when the person answers, so you talked about this earlier, how we want to jump in. We already have our next thing ready to go. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing this myself. I force myself to pause and I say, tell me more. Now, I might want to piggyback on something you just said. Like I've got this thing. I'm like, I might forget it, and I'm old. I might forget it. Instead,
I might forget what I'm saying. I'm old.
Right, but instead, I'm practicing the pause. Practice the pause, and I say, "Tell me more." That's where the nuggets are. That's where the deeper information lies. And there's so much children, colleagues. They tell you this one thing. And when we talk about inclusion and belonging, it's not until you say, tell me more, that you get that nugget exposed. So that's what I'm working on.
That is beautiful. And I like that. I use that, and I use silence, because I've found with my sons, if I can just be quiet long enough for them to take another breath, they will continue. Just eye contact and showing that I'm engaged is a nonverbal way of saying, tell me more. So I'm just staring at you right now.
Well, here's the thing. Tell me more. And that silence with your son, it's a expression of love, the way I see it. Yeah, it's an expression of love. You're communicating from your heart when you're doing that.
Right. And it's great to get to that place too, that, as you said, your personal narrative, that I'm enough at peace with myself that I can give someone else space and time, and I don't have to be the center of everything. There are those who would argue whether or not I've achieved that place. I might not live there, but I visit there often.
Exactly. This is what I'm talking about. It's a journey, right? And we're all evolving, right? We're on, because I think there are 8 billion people in the world now. We're on 8 billion different evolutionary paths, right? So you honor yours, I honor mine, and we're all in this together.
Having a very human experience. Fantastic. Well, tell us how readers can connect with you and get copies of your work, newsletters, and just stay in the loop, and particularly be aware when you release that next book. When? See, I learned.
Yeah, that's right. When. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, the book's called The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter. And I will spell my first name because it's different. So it's Terre, Terre. My email is Terre, Terre, @shortgroup.net. And that's the best place. And if you go to shortgroup.net, you can download the first chapter for free. And then, have a gander, have a poke around, and then order the book. You can order the book on the website, but also on any of your preferred online retailers as well.
That's fantastic. And it will be an enjoyable read, as you can tell from having heard this interview from someone who's not just an expert, but you're really engaging. And I like the way you deliver important information in a way that anyone can understand. That is so critical to me, that it's not useful if you're speaking a language, no matter how good or true it is. If no one understands, then it's not practical, it's not useful. And what you shared today is quite fantastic. I appreciate your time and your effort to be here, and look forward to having you back when your new book is published.
I would very much appreciate that too. It's been an honor for me, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wasn't that a great program? Oh, love that episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's MOE. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about my services that I offer, and book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to talk with your group, and I'd love to work with you. So until the next time, review, renew, and re-you. Thank you.